Hello, Oscar.
Hello.
You do a lot of philosophical practice in many countries around the world. You go to Africa and Asia and Europe and so many countries, and you meet a lot of people. So, is your philosophical practice, is your philosophy only about other people, or does it apply also to you?
Well, strangely enough, it primarily applies to me, which is a bit paradoxical when one sees that I travel in a lot of places and meet a lot of people every year. But in a funny way, when I meet people, it's always a challenge for myself. So if I go to Mali, or if I go to Taiwan, or if I go to Norway, in each case, I will be confronting myself to different situation, different culture, different context, different parameters. And I think it's a bit the Odysseus principle, right? Odysseus travels a lot, but it's always a quest for himself, even though you might think as well that he's trying to escape or flee himself. But I do think that first and foremost, the philosophical practice has to be for oneself. It has to be something deeply rooted in your quest for truth, in your quest for knowing yourself. And if you do that, then something will happen with other people because it's real, you see. If you only want to help people or do things for people or get a job, some people call me and they said, I have no job as a teacher, I want to do philosophical practitioner. I said, well, I don't think it's a good idea. I think you should find another job. It's not a reason to do philosophical practice because you have no job as a teacher, for example. I mean, in the absolute, it's possible, but most likely you're not on the right path. There has to be something deeply rooted in yourself where it's a Socratic injunction. Know thyself, know who you are, as a condition for knowing the gods and the universe, as he says it. But for this, you have to combat many things in yourself, primarily the fear. You know, one thing we noticed in philosophy consultation, fear takes a very important aspect. We ask questions to people and we see they escape the questions, they try not to answer, they play games, we're scared to meet the other, right? And the other represents reality. The other represents what resists. So if you accept the confrontation with the other, you accept confrontation to reality, you accept confrontation to yourself. Because I think reality first is the relationship to yourself. When people don't like reality, for example, because they don't like what is good or they don't like what is bad, in general, they have a problem with themselves.
So, this kind of encounter with yourself or with the truth, the search for the truth and for self understanding, I imagine this does not happen only when you meet counselees. It happens in your entire day.
Yes, yes, yeah. You watch yourself. You watch yourself doing things, thinking a bit what the trendy now Buddhist concept of awareness, of full consciousness. I don't remember exactly the exact term. Where you have to watch what is happening with you. Yeah, there's something like that where you have to be able to accept yourself in spite of what you don't like. In fact, the unhappy consciousness that Hegel talks about, where there is a big discrepancy between what you see when you look at yourself and what you would like about the world, about the absolute, about your idea of yourself, about what your wife sees when she sees you, whatever, right? Yeah. So yes, reconciling with reality, which does not exclude trying to change reality, changing yourself, changing the world. But to change things, you first have to see them face to face.
And in what way is it specifically philosophical? In what way is the process philosophical as opposed to sort of new age kind of self-awareness?
Well, first of all, there's a conceptual dimension, which New Age doesn't particularly care about. There is a preoccupation with thinking and thinking competencies. I do think that that the meditation can have some similar procedures or looks for something a little bit similar. But what is specific to the philosophical practice is the conceptual dimension, the problematization dimension, the deepening, what you can call thinking or critical thinking, and that's its specificity. But there are other ways. You can do yoga, you can play football and do this, you can do whatever you want. But there's a specific path with philosophical work.
And are there specific readings, philosophical readings, or does philosophical reading the history of philosophy, does this help at all in this process?
Well, in my case, it has helped me a lot. A lot of the tools I use in the philosophical practice were brought by the philosophers. Distinctions, problems, all kind of hypotheses, right, to understand the human soul, to understand the world. Yes, I think philosophy culture is very important, which deals a little bit with the paradoxical aspect of philosophical practice, because we invite everyone to philosophize even though they did not study philosophy. So we play a bit the docte ignorantia of Socrates. We don't need knowledge, but at the same time, to be truthful, if people want to do a good job, they should have two things. One, they should have some philosophical culture. It's helpful, gives you more insight. You cannot reinvent all the history of philosophy, nor they can reinvent the history of mathematics. But as well, there's another reason, because you have to confront yourself to thinking activity. Every time I open the pages of Kant, for example, which is a difficult author, I really have to confront myself with my own difficulties of thinking. It sort of puts you back into reality of the difficulty of thinking we might have. So it's a very good exercise, just the way you would challenge yourself doing marathon or some physical exercise. So there's two reasons to deal with philosophers: to get some knowledge and to test yourself permanently.
I wonder how this kind of practice with yourself, how it influences your encounter with your counselees. How does the fact that you have done philosophical practice with yourself, how does it influence the encounter?
Well, you totally enter the world of this person. In other words, you take this person in front of you as a challenge. Let's enter your world. So I have to give up my ideas about what I want, what I fear, what I desire, and totally do what Hegel calls internal critique. Enter from inside and see how it works, right? So if I'm not used to challenging myself, I will bring there my own issues. In fact, we have noticed when we do the training of people that there are two kinds of problems. People that identify too much to the person, so they bring their fears and expectations, or people that don't like, or it doesn't speak to them, this way of thinking. So you have to enter this person's world totally naked. So you have to, you need a good reason to do it. It's not natural to enter somebody's world and giving up who you are. One way I like to call it, you have to be dead. To do a philosophical consultation, you have to be dead. Not that you don't exist anymore because you speak and things, but particularly with expectation, fears, desires, all this heavy emotional luggage should be gone. Another way I say it is you have to be a non-subject. See, you speak to a subject, someone who comes with his question, his preoccupation, his subjectivity, and you have to be a non-subject. As a non-subject, then you can enter in his subjectivity. But if you're another subject, then you cannot do this. So there's some ascetic dimension to give up who you are. Some people will say that's not logical and impossible, and agree in a way, but as much as possible, so you can accept to enter in a naked way this person's worldview with all the considerations around it. In a way, you need the others to do that, because one exercise that we practice called self-consultation. It's a bit like you play chess with yourself. You have a paper, you're the client, you put a question, you become philosophers, you question yourself. It's a nice exercise. But we observe that there's always a certain tendency toward complacency to do that. It's still nice, you can do it. So you can never replace the others, because the others, they're the strangers, they're the Martians, they're the ones that come from another place. They're the ones that ask you the questions you don't like. You know, they ask you a question. Your first temptation is say, I would not ask that kind of question, or this is not the right kind of question, or even it's an awkward question. But the fact you have to answer people's question, because when we do with training, we do mutual questioning. You know, I question someone, he questions me. So you have to accept that whatever comes, you accept the challenge. You have to accept the Levinas has this nice idea that the face of the other one represents infinity. It's something like that, you know, to face somebody else and to have to respond and try not to escape to someone else makes you look into the abyss. Mm-hmm. So you need the others for that.
Yeah, that's very interesting. But let me sharpen what I wanted to ask. Since being a philosophical practitioner, as you say, is not just a matter of applying methods to others, but also being a self-reflective person to philosophize with yourself, then how do you train for this? How do you train others to be self-reflective people?
Well, one main thing is by, like in football, you practice and you see problems that could occur. I'll give you a couple of problems that we observed, and people do this. One is that people are a bit scared to intrude. So they do what I call an interview, a bit like a journalist. Well, like now you let me free to speak and express myself, which is called the interview scheme. When we do a consultation, you don't do this. I mean, you might do this a little bit, but then you want to narrow down because you want to challenge the person, which is not in a way not your job there, but that's a job in a consultation. You have to challenge the other person, so you want short answer, as Socrates says, and challenge. So people, they have two type of flaws. Either they do interviews, so the person goes on and talks about whatever. On the reverse, you have people that it's a teacher, I call teacher syndrome. They want to put in the mouth of the other person their answers, and it's very visible. They want to convince, right? So we work on that. We do it, we film it, then we have a group, we watch, we observe the moves. We do a lot of analysis of videos, for example. Mm-hmm. By the way, even for the clients, we do this. I have a principle when we do a consultation. I film and then I give the video to the person. Because I've noticed that when you, like right now I'm doing an interview, I'm sure if I see myself, I'll see funny things I do, which I'm not conscious at all. And in the consultation, when people do it, they're not really conscious of what's happening. So we send them a video, we send them a series of questions, and we explain to the person that doing the consultation itself is only half the job. The other half, watch the video and try to answer the questions and try to analyze. Yeah.
Very interesting. One last question, a general one. Any interesting observations, anecdotes, advice regarding the philosopher as a self-reflective person?
Well, I like to speak like Jesus. Do not fear, because that I think that's the main obstacle I see. We're really scared to see ourselves, and that's really empirically after many years of doing consultations. I really think that is, in Zen Buddhism they speak about the 4 poisons, which is anger, doubt, confusion, and I don't remember the last one. Fear, did I say? But fear, I think, is really the main poison. So do not fear.
Thank you very much, Oscar.
Okay.